Hello, my name is Aaron Cavanagh and I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Post-Burnout.com. Post-Burnout.com is a culture website dedicated to venerating burnt-out artists the world over. This is our website's podcast where we publish full-length recordings of our interviews, which are sometimes the unedited versions of our site's articles and at other times are exclusives. If you're a returning listener, thank you for coming back, and if this is your first time listening, thank you for checking us out. We hope you enjoy and consider subscribing, giving the episodes a thumbs up if you're on YouTube, or giving it a rating if you're anywhere else. It really helps us out. Thank you. Alright, in this edition of Post-Burnout.com interviews, guitarist and vocalist John Harney of the Kildare-based alt-rock band Blue Slate discusses their debut EP, This Is How I Sleep at Night, which was released today. The shift in sound from their first two singles, his love of hardcore punk, the Kildare music scene, the influence of Elliot Smith on his lyrics, extensive touring, the band's original deleted EP, signing with Blowtorch Records, and his criticisms of BIMM, music journalism, and the Irish music scene.
Can you hear me now?
Hey John, how's it going? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Sorry about that. It just my phone was acting up. I had to re-download Zoom and all that crack.
Ah, no worries, man. How's it going?
Good, yeah, I'm doing well. Tipping along.
That's perfect, man. I'll try to take up too much of your time. I was gonna actually start with the last time I interviewed Blue Slate. I interviewed your guitarist Pierce,
Yeah,
and that would have been in I think October 23. You guys had just released Prospect, and at that time the band was kind of like brand new. You've been playing like a lot of gigs, just trying to make your name. But the actual kind of four piece had just kind of solidified not too long before, and you'd released your debut single. So I was wondering, kind of like what's the band kind of been up to in that time? A lot, I assume.
yeah. No, the dynamic has definitely changed a lot. I think the two lads that kind of came in when Prospects came out, like James and Tim. I think
hmm
we started to tour more and started playing abroad and really putting ourselves out there. Funding ourselves, trying to do this kind of DIY thing. And it worked for us. We got tighter and we got used to traveling and we started writing more. Even when we found ourselves abroad, we were writing a lot more. Um, and everyone started to write their own parts and everyone started, like, the songs started to come together more like organically, and we started to develop our own sound and a lot more. And it was less of just me and Pierce and more of the four lads. And I think that's why the EP that's coming out really represents that, like, that last year of us kind of, slaving away, touring, and, trying to get, known, a bit more to
hmm
to be able to release music at this point.
How do you find the music on the EP has kind of changed from the first two singles that you guys put out? Because obviously, you towards the end of last year, you put out Beaker and Charlotte's song as kind of like teasers for the EP. And to me, as a listener, I didn't find them like too dissimilar, I guess, to what we would have expected from Blue Slate. But from your perspective, how do you find that the songs on this EP kind of differ from what people might be expecting?
Yeah, I think a lot of people expected us, especially since, like, Wipers and Prospect, to be going down like a shoegaze route, or
hmm
you know, more like, I don't know, just we didn't really want to feel boxed in with the EP. That's why, like, if you listen to the likes of This Hour Sleep at Night, the song, and then Charlotte's song, like, we wanted to make sure that every song had its own life. You know what I mean? And it could walk. It had its own set of legs. It wasn't as if it was like, okay, we had, like, okay, this whole EP sounds the same. We want, like,
hmm
each song to have its own kind of punch to it. And I think we just, in order for us to do that, we had to draw away from what people expected us to do. Well, that's what I think anyway. We consciously made the decision to try and go down, like, avenues that we've never been before, and
Yeah.
let it be like in Charlotte's song, getting a violin in, or use overdubbing a serious amount on some other songs, like, with sampling and stuff like that. So we tried to kind of take ourselves out of our comfort zone.
One thing I really like about the kind of dynamic of the band is I think I caught you for the first time at the Bella Barn on Halloween night. And what I thought was very interesting about that show was that, like, you're very like kind of like loud and bombastic, like really getting the crowd going, really like shouting to the crowd and really engaging with them. Yet the band themselves seemed kind of a bit reticent. It seemed like, they were kind of like, they were playing their parts, they were hitting their beats and all that, but like it didn't seem like show offy. It just seemed like they were trying to kind of blend into the crowd. Do you think that's a fair kind of assessment of the band dynamics, that you kind of like come out and you're really like, showy and kind of like a showman, so to speak, and the rest of the band are just kind of like, uh just kind of doing their
Yeah.
thing in the
No, I
in
know
the
what you.
corner.
Yeah, like it really does come down to what kind of night it is. Like maybe that night the lads weren't, as energetic, but I don't know. Like I think.
That wasn't my critique, by the way. I wasn't saying they weren't energetic.
Oh no, no, yeah, I know what you mean. I think I'm just a bit kind of a bit out there when it comes to live performance because I just really love it, and
Yeah.
I always looked up to the kind of whenever you watch the likes of, let's say, Iggy Pop, like, oh, here he goes, he's going into the crowd. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
always loved that. Like, that didn't mean Ron Ashton had to go into the crowd. Ron Ashton was cool enough just standing there. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? But if everyone jumped into the crowd, then I think people would just be a bit scared, you know? So like, it's kind of a release for me. I obviously it's entertainment. I don't walk off the stage a psychopath or something, because people they're a bit shocked whenever I meet someone and they only saw us live and then I bump into them in the night out, they're like, "Oh, you're not a psycho." I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm just very energetic on stage. It's my release, and I really feel connected to the songs that I'm playing. So I just go into my own little world. And that's the
Yeah.
art of it. And if I wasn't feeling it, I probably wouldn't be acting that way.
Yeah, it's funny you were kind of remind me because you mentioned Iggy Pop there, and I remember listening to Henry Rollins talking about this like competition he had when Rollins band was around, to try, like, they would play festivals and stuff with Iggy Pop, and he was always trying to outdo him as a performer. And he said a similar thing where it's like, he'd come on, he'd be screaming like, TVI, and just like doing all these like, just like the craziest, like most dangerous stunts you can see. And then after the gig, he'd come over like real Midwestern and be like, "Thank you so much for over for us. It was really nice to
Yeah,
have you and all this."
yeah,
So I think
because
like
you just.
most of those kind of like psychotic front men are often really reserved and polite when you catch them off stage.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, yeah, I don't think I'm as extroverted as people think I am, but I really have no fear in showing my dance moves. You know.
Well, that's good. I mean, like, I think that like fun is apparent. And that kind of like, as you mentioned, that like real joy of being on stage is very apparent, and I think it transcends into the audience when you see it live. I mean, it really, I don't know, kind of gets people on the right foot. I think where, if you're kind of like a bit willing to be out there and expressive, then other people, because I find like at gigs sometimes like people are listening to music and they're kind of like they have their hands in their pocket and they're kind of like looking around, checking what everyone else is doing a little bit. Everyone's a little too like reserved about potentially coming off as like, I don't know, too expressive or something like that in a kind of like laughable way. But I think when
Yeah,
performers are
it's a
able to,
very Irish thing though, I noticed, like, because when we went to Rotterdam or when we went to Paris, let's say, it's like the
Mhm.
crowd are like, "Oh, this sounds good, let's dance." You know what I mean? And it makes me look less like I'm so into it that people are like,
Yeah.
with the Irish crowd, they look at me and I'm getting so into it and I really enjoy it. They're kind of like just looking at what I'm doing because they're like, "Wow, he's really into that. Well, that's mad." You know what I mean? And then they're listening to it and they're enjoying it, but they're not trying to move around as well because, Tim in the corner there is looking at me and thinks that I'll look like an idiot for dancing.
What's it actually like, Kendrick? Because you've been touring around a lot. You mentioned there, at the Netherlands and France. Yeah, I think you've also been playing the UK as well. So, like, what's
Yeah,
that kind of
yeah.
like actually getting to do shows kind of out of the country? What's that kind of dynamic like?
It depends. Like it depends like when we did Left of Dial in Rotterdam, that's great because the crowd is there. The crowd's already going to be there. It's a festival run. It's the same with Supersonic, a renowned club in Paris, phenomenal. But like we've went to London once and I think there was like 5 people in the crowd. Do you know what I mean? And it's like it's not as glamorous as you expect to be. You're not going to go over there and the promoter's going to do a phenomenal job. But now, like in our most recent trip to London. It was actually quite there was a bit of a crowd there, but the first time we went, it was very disheartening, and we just like, you know what, fuck it. Even if you know there's two people in the crowd and there's an old man and a dog, we're just going to do the exact same show every time. You know what I mean? And I think
Yeah.
that's really like it's the Garden. Let's pretend it's Madison Square Garden or something.
No, I think
So,
that's I really like that kind of transparency too, where it's like, because I think like whenever people kind of like go to London, they make this like big deal of it, and it's like, oh, we're doing this headline show here, but they don't actually talk about the reality of like, again, only a dozen people or so turning up and kind of like having to play that. And I think, there is a romanticism to being in a band, but there's also a material reality to it. I
oh
think it
yeah, but it
ribs.
could break a band. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
really could break a band. And it's like you don't even realize it's not even the show itself. It's like living with each other and we're lucky. We only have to go. We're never really gone for long periods of time. We're only 3 days away and
Mhm.
then back. No, normally we haven't done a tour, but we have a tour coming up. I think, but we're trying to book a tour now for April or May. But besides that, we have gotten to know each other well. Like, okay, I'm not going to do this because this might annoy him, or I'm not going to do that. Like, maybe we all need a bit of space at our own time. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Mhm.
really important to know that too, and I think that's really important in a band's dynamic. You know?
Yeah. Do you guys live in close quarters when you're on the road?
Yeah, yeah, we're all Kildare heads.
Yeah.
I've known Pierce since I was a kid, and I've known James since he was a teenager. Tim came along, when we were looking for a drummer, but we're all just really close friends, and none of us did the whole music college thing. Like, I come from a farming background, and you know, we're all country lads. We're not really, we're just really, we're just music lovers that
Yeah.
started the band.
Yeah, I remember Pierce sort of telling me, I was re-listening to our interview just before this, and he was sort of telling me that he's like almost afraid of learning music theory because it might ruin like some of the mystique of actually, I guess that kind of organic nature. And I think like, I remember that was like always a big selling point of say someone like the Pixies was that they didn't come from like a real musical background of theory or anything like that. They were just music fans, and that created like some very interesting music. I think it's a similar thing with Blue Slate where um you guys are really tight and you guys are really and I know that comes from really extensive practicing and really extensive gigs and nailing it down. At the time, Pierce was sort of saying this was only when your second single was coming out. He was saying like sometimes he wishes he had a bit more time to actually redo some of the earlier songs that you guys put out. Do you
Mm,
feel that now? Because as the band is getting tighter and as new dynamics are coming in with new members and things like that, do you ever look back at kind of your older songs and wish you could do them at the stage you're at now? Or are you happy with those songs as they were to kind of exist as like the public's version of that song, if you know what I mean.
yeah, I know what you mean. It's more for me. It would be more remixing, if
Mhm.
anything. Do you know what I mean? Um, like the likes of Prospect, the way we play that now compared to when it was released, it has a different groove to it nearly now because
Mhm.
Tim has because naturally enough, like you're gonna get kind of bored of playing the same thing every time. Like Tim has like developed his drum beat in it that it has a really good groove to it, and I always say to the lads, I would love to sit down and like re-record it or like remix it the way it is. There's a few little things like that, and I think you know what, at the same time though, like that's what gives it its charm. I mean, like we can like you can say that about anything, you can go back and say 2 years ago I should have went and done this in college or something, like it's the same as anything, but that's why I love like the Velvet Underground because it's like it's not supposed to be perfect, and that's why we love it.
Yeah, although it's like it kind of becomes perfect in its own weird way. I mean, I think that
Exactly, it has a life of itself.
yeah, I think that first like Velvet Underground Nico record is like pretty much flawless. Like I don't think there's like anything in there that I would go you have to change that. So sometimes like that is like kind of what you need. You need that kind of like bit of lack of professionalism and a bit of kind of I'd almost say naivety where it's like again if you're just gonna be like kind of worried about creating the perfect product you'll never get anything done.
Yeah, I don't know about yourself, but like whenever one of like all my favorite artists, I love seeing the development through albums. It's like okay, their
Yeah.
first album's a bit raw, and then second they try to go too polished, and then third album they kind of go back to what they used to be. And I love that. I love seeing bands develop like that, and it just adds more character to the band itself.
Yeah. Although actually you were mentioning there the Stooges, like what was interesting about them was they went back and like remastered like some of their older records like Funhouse and what was the
Raw
other one?
Power, was it?
Raw Power, yep. And
Yeah.
I think their first one as well, just the self-titled one, but
That was done
uh,
by John Cale.
yeah, and what I think is like interesting is like it does they probably are the better sounding records in all honesty because like everything's just basically they don't like change too much, but it's just more kind of audible, I guess. But I think there is a charm to those old records that they were recorded too. I think it's good if you can have like the original and the remastered version
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that
of course. Yeah,
pick
if
and
I was to
choose.
redo Prospect, I'd still keep up the old one. Like I wouldn't bin it or anything,
Yeah.
Like a
Well,
band
actually,
like
now
Courier did that, so
yeah,
like so.
I was gonna ask you about that because like, I've talked to artists who've kind of like deleted old songs for whatever reason. They're like, yeah, I didn't want that being up or whatever, and they delete those songs. And not to be too dramatic, but I've kind of compared it to historical revisionism in a way. Do you feel that way too? Like if you're deleting these old tracks, you're kind of I don't know, deleting a part of history or something like that.
It depends. Like we actually had music out before Wipers,
Yeah,
but it was an EP. It had 4 songs on it, and it was all done on 4 track.
yeah,
And it was like very raw, kind of Ty Segal kind of feel to it. And
mhm,
we used it to get gigs because we couldn't get gigs without having something released.
right.
And then when we got going, we deleted it. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's fair enough. But I think if you had a song and it's got a good few streams and people are actively listening to it, I think it'd be a bit unfair to unrelease it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, totally. It's because like you don't know what your music is going to mean to somebody else, and you're kind of taking it away from them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. As much as it's
Um,
about you, it's not really, you know what I mean?
no, I think like once you release something, it kind of escapes your
Yeah, 100%.
authorship in a way.
Yeah.
Um, how do you feel like now, having like played for as long as you have? Because like now it's about I guess like it's almost 2 years, I guess, since the band release in March it will be, I think. 2 years since the band released their first single and kind of the first sort of proper iteration of Blue Slate has kind of been gigging around a lot. Does it feel that long to you, or does it feel much quicker, or does it feel actually
Yeah.
longer?
It's I don't know. I think it feels like a long time ago since Wipers anyway. It
Mhm.
really does. Like I feel like it's a really different band now, and I don't know. It's taking its time. I don't know. It's weird. It's just weird. I don't really reflect that much. It's kind of like, especially when you're constantly like looking forward to the next release. I never really reflect on what we've done or
Yeah.
what we are like. I'm constantly always looking onto the next thing. But yeah, I don't know. It maybe has for like, I don't know. I'd have to ask the lads, to be honest.
Okay.
I don't really know. I'm just having a good time. That's all.
Guys, what's my opinion on this?
Yeah, I don't have one.
That's fair. I think like totally you get so like swamped what you're doing in the meantime. You just don't have that ability to just like reflect in the moment. But I think sometimes it's a good thing because you're just like constantly chasing something rather than, sort of sitting back on your laurels and
Yeah,
just
like
kind of like yeah.
I think if I was still kind of like wallowing in old music that we've made, I think we'd be taking a step back. You know what I mean? Like I don't even think we play Wipers live any. We don't play Wipers live anymore.
Yeah.
And it's not out of like, oh, we hate the song. Like we all love the song. It's just it feels like compared to what we're doing now, it's really kind of it's not the same band. And I think a lot of people would agree with me on that.
Yeah. No, I think it's important too for artists to kind of like, decide their set list based on what they actually want to do rather than kind of fan expectation.
Yeah, of course.
I was wondering actually for your new EP that you were kind of mentioning, this is How I Sleep at Night. It's coming out February 12th. Yeah, I was wondering, was this kind of recorded in one go as the with intent of being an EP, or was this material you were working on and then you kind of decided that would work well collectively?
Yeah, well, we kind of initially wanted to release the single that's coming out tomorrow night. The title track. We wanted to release that as a single,
Hmm.
and then me and Pierce in the band, we all just kind of sat down. We said we kind of want to aim towards something instead of just releasing singles. And we said, you know what, we'll go in the studio, we'll record 5 songs, get them down, and we'll just do an EP and see how we feel about it, you know. So we went in, we recorded This How We Sleep at Night. It took us 2 tries. We did it the first time in another studio with a different producer, and it just wasn't coming out right. We got to mix and master. It just didn't sound right, and we said we'll just put it aside. We went in and done Charlotte's song, and it kind of gave us hope again. We were like, okay, this actually sounds like fairly good. We're happy with this, and then we redone This How We Sleep at Night. We done Marina Del Rey and Lead Us into Temptation. We did that all in 2 days in Sonic Studios. So we were
Jesus.
like, yeah, we kind of did it like I kind of felt like because I watched Breadcrumb Trail, that Slint documentary, and
I
I
love that
know,
album. I love that
yeah,
album.
and I remember hearing that they recorded that album over a weekend, and I was like, oh, we're kind of like Slint, you know. So like yeah,
That's a hard
it
one.
was
That's a hard act to follow, Spiderland.
yeah, thank God they didn't try, you know. But no, look at it didn't feel rushed though because we were well rehearsed. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
We went in guns blazing, like we knew what we wanted. We demoed everything. Like Pierce is a phenomenal producer himself. Like he like does
yeah.
all the demos, and he produced
He did the
Wipers,
first one.
and
Yeah,
yeah, so like he could like we were able to flesh it out ourselves at home, and then by the time we got in the studio, there was no time wasted, you know. So
yeah.
we were lucky that way. So we were able to do it over that weekend, you know.
How do you find that the music you or the rest of the band members have been listening to has changed since Blue Slate has began, or has it?
Um, yeah, like even I've even noticed with I think Tim would be the best example because he was the last one to join, kind of
Hmm.
thing. Like he's very like whatever is very heavy drum orientated. And ever since we all started writing together, he's getting more into like like just listening to the Beatles with me or
Yeah,
something like that. Like he like it's mad like that it's like because you're surrounded by the band the whole time, you all end up listening to the same music a lot, Like we all got really into the Stones all of a sudden. So we're
okay.
everyone's listening to Stones. Then we found we're writing like this, like that kind of same format. And then we're like, here, we better stop and start getting back to our own our roots because we're just gonna be like a dad rock band. So we kind of yeah, no, it does like we kind of just all feed off one another. So if like let's say I'm into Deaf Heaven for a month.
Hmm.
The lads will more than likely be into that, and then it'll be whoever, if Pierce is into something or James is into something, we'll all kind of gravitate towards whatever we're all loving, you know.
You find that playing in the music scene, like, because you're playing bills with like, several different bands at night. Do you find that the music you're hearing in the clubs is kind of influencing you too, or
No, not really. I'm
no?
I'm being completely honest, and I don't mean it like in a way like we kind of I don't know I don't want to be kind of you know mean or anything, but like I
Sure.
read these like these guides like like the Goo or whatever, and they tell you about how great these bands are and how you need to go and see them live, and then you go and it's not what like it's written to be, like it's just not it, and then you want to go home and I just I find myself I go home and I watch videos of the Bad Brains or something like that, something that like would actually that's full of energy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think a lot of, I don't know, like I like to say there is a scene in Dublin, but it doesn't really feel like one because I think everyone's trying to one up on everyone. Do you know what I mean? No one's actually trying to help out one another.
That's
So
interesting because that's a very unique perspective. Because like other artists I've talked to have talked about how there's a lack of cutthroat mentality. So what's your kind of relation, I guess, with the Irish music scene then?
I don't really know. I kind of just it's I think BIM kind of ruined everything. If you
Oh,
know what I
that's
mean.
interesting. Yeah, because lots of artists I'm talking about are either in BIM or BIM alumni, and it's always interesting, like hearing everyone's different kind of like perception of what BIM was like. Some people loved it, some people hated it, some people thought it was
Mm,
very accommodating to the music they wanted, some thought it wasn't at all. I think it's really interesting to have kind of like the band who doesn't have that perspective to kind of like talk out about it. So yeah,
yeah, like so like the best way I can describe it is that everyone is told they're great, or if they're not great, they're not told at all.
mhm.
And like I think criticism, I'm very lucky. Like everyone I surround myself with at home. Like I come from a very like cutthroat kind of background of like criticism. Like if I was writing something and a family member thought it was shit, they walk by and say that's not great. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I feel like with like the likes of a couple of like publications and stuff like that, they just champion everyone just to
Hmm.
make sure they're not hurting anyone's feelings, but that's not making people better as
Yeah.
musicians or not necessarily making the best bands. And that's, I'd imagine what I'm saying probably isn't a popular opinion, but that's kind of what I've gathered from it. You know what I mean? And I don't know. It's kind of like
No.
it's a touchy subject, but like I don't think I think the Irish scene is just it's a really weird. It's not as if like let's say back in the 80s, DC had a hardcore thing. And then
Right.
like, Seattle had the grunge thing. It's like it's not like that anymore. It's like you're getting this kind of you got jazz and you're getting, these there's so much going on and there's so many moving parts that you can't really shine the light on one particular thing. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think like for a while there was like that resurgence in like post-punk revivalism that was around for a while, but I think everything else we've sort of seen the dissolvement somewhat of genre, which is interesting because you see like acts that like are very like bills that are being put together that aren't really connective. So you're seeing like a lot of like really kind of incongruous kind of acts together in one night, and to some degree I like that. I like seeing the variety, but you're right. I mean, there isn't really, I think, a semblance of like the Dublin sound or the Cork sound or anything like that. Everything seems a little similar.
Yeah, I can't give out about Cork at all because I actually do like, like I think Cardinals are phenomenal and the
Yeah,
Cliffords are great and the Drive are cool too.
yeah.
There's some great bands coming from the West and, Cork, but I don't know, maybe just because we know Dublin so well at this point, it kind of feels like, I don't know. We're always we love Dublin and we love playing there, but like sometimes I'm speaking more for myself. I'm kind of like a bit meh,
Yeah.
you
No,
know.
that's fair. And I will say one thing I've noticed is that people, there are a lot of people who go to like gigs and stuff, but aren't really in it for the music, if that makes sense. They're kind of there
Yeah,
to
it's like
support
bring
their
your friends
friends,
along.
or
Yeah.
they're there just for like to be part of the scene. But I see like lots of people like dipping out before this act plays or that act plays, and I'm like, if I'm there, I want to see everyone. You know what I mean? I want to give everyone
Yeah.
a chance, and even if I'm not into it, it's like I kind of just want to be there just to be like, okay, I gave that a shot and I didn't like it, or hey, at least you're not playing to an empty room.
Well, it really comes down to just oversaturation of, like there is a gig on every night and there's probably three.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like I think maybe a lot of the reasons that everyone's spoiled for choice,
Hmm.
it could be something along them lines, where, people have their mind made up what they like. But I don't know. Yeah, it's a weird one, but I think yeah, I stand by with BIMM ruining everything.
Bim.
That's one thing, everything, I take everything else with a pinch of salt, but I agree. I fully believe that.
Well, one thing I noticed about the BIM scene was when I was kind of growing up as a teenager, just I guess BIM would have been around at that point, but it wasn't like the must that it is now for musicians. And I remember going to like local shows, and there'd be kids there, and it would be like kids around my age, like 16, 17, 18, and just doing pretty shitty gigs, like, playing covers and not necessarily being sync or not being a great singer or not being, but with time they would grow and then they would start recording and they would start, they start actually kind of becoming a good band. They kind of, it was trial by fire in a way, where now I feel like that era of like, you can go see kids your age playing really badly and it's kind of like the original punk rock thing where it's like, you're like, I could do that. I think that's going now because everyone's just like uh, so like trained and so like professional and down to a T before they even get on the stage, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird one. I mean,
I wonder what it's like for kids now.
That's how the Beastie Boys started, like so, and a
Yeah.
lot of bands,
Yeah,
I
they
don't
were a
know.
hardcore band at the beginning, yeah.
Yeah, they opened for the Bad Brains, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. They were their first EP, I actually kind of like it, but it's not the greatest, but it's pretty good. That was the other thing too about like that hardcore thing you were talking about. I used to really love like listening to old hardcore records from like 7 inches from like I was a big I'll admit I was a big like Californian hardcore fan. Like I was very much a West Coast hardcore fan. Like I love those bands, but the East Coast stuff with like with like Boston and New York and DC and stuff like that was great too. And it really was just kids just like putting their stuff out, and it sounded terrible, but I think there was a sincerity to that, uh like lack of professionalism,
Yeah, I think what I definitely take from hardcore, I definitely not musically anymore. I used to be
yeah
more like, yeah, I used to love it when I was younger. Like I used to always like play all the Black Flag songs, play all the Bad Brains songs, all that crack. But then I kind of more admired the energy. I think I
yeah
think I think the biggest problem, if we're going to compare that kind of old way of like going on, is that like there's a certain kind of energy in that room that you can see from them videos that's just not there nowadays.
yeah
And I don't know what it is, or maybe people are just a bit shy or something, or I don't know. But I think a crowd, it's really hard to get a crowd kind of up and dancing, these days.
yeah
Whereas you watch any of them shows, like I remember I was watching Bad Brains Live and CBGB's back in 1982, and
yeah, the Christmas
before
show,
the
yeah,
yeah, and before the big takeover starts, like the crowd are literally like warming themselves up before HR does like a backflip.
yeah
Do you know what I mean? They're getting ready. They're like, all
yeah
right, okay, this is going to be insane, you know. So like I definitely love that. I'd love to try and if the scene was like that, would be fucking great. You know.
No, I think like hardcore to some degree still exists, and there's a band in Dublin now called Goon, and there's still like a bit of a hardcore scene. I remember, I don't know if you know the band Skell, but they played Workman's, and that was very much like the first time I saw one of them kind of big kind of like hardcore shows in real time. But you're right, I think that kind of like seeing like like it was always great just seeing like those bands from that time, and even if it was like a support act that no one was there to see, because like those bills would have like five people on or whatever, and people were still just dancing around. It was just like so much energy, and just everyone was on stage and just crowd surfing and diving in. I think to some degree venues kind of like stopped that. Like a lot of places wouldn't book punk bands after a while. You guys actually started, I believe, again, going from my interview with Pierce, like had hardcore influence at the beginning, but kind of moved away from it because you found the parameters of hardcore music to be a little too limiting. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think every hardcore band did though. Even
Yeah.
like, like I mean, all you have to do is look at Fugazi like that, like obviously being Minor Threat, and then Fugazi, like that's they're taking reggae influence all of a sudden. Like I think even with the post-punk thing, like from the 70s, 80s, like when you start off with such a severe genre, like there's only one place you can go, and it's just like self-destruction. Because
Yeah.
you need to slow things down, and you need to know when people need to be able to breathe as well at a show. Like, and we
Yeah.
weren't just like into hardcore as well. We were like we wanted to pull in other influences. Like we loved My Bloody Valentine. We loved like all of that shoegaze stuff as well. And then we also loved just rock in general. Like that, like grunge, and like we just wanted to try a bit of everything. And I think with hardcore, it just felt really limiting. And I think Pierce hates hardcore too. So um, I think it just made sense for us to like. I was the only real kind of hardcore guy in the band. Like I think James could appreciate it, and Tim loves it. But
Yeah.
I think we were the only two that was like, yeah, let's do hardcore, and the other two were like, no,
Yeah,
which is
well, I mean, if
fine.
you look at the history of hardcore, I mean, by like '83, a lot of those bands have split up. Minor Threat, Misfits, a lot of the bands that started going in new directions that were still around, like obviously Black Flag, you were mentioned, started doing albums like My War and Slip It In, and started going, and then Husker Du with Sen Arcade, the Minutemen with Double Nickels on the Dime, and it was like it had to kind of evolve. It was a great thing for like '78 to '83, but then kind of after that. But then you look at 82,
Yeah,
man, it was like this huge explosion of just like Bad Brains, Fear, Circle Jerks, Bad Religion, all these like bands putting out like their first, like some of the best, like
yeah,
X as
like
well, putting out
me,
some of the best hardcore. Yeah,
yeah, 100%. Like when me and James, when we were growing up, like obviously I was into hardcore, but he was finding cooler bands like the Replacements and the Minutemen
yeah,
and stuff like that. And then I got into that, and that's when, like, yeah, I still had the hardcore thing, but I like if it wasn't for Husker Du, the Minutemen, Replacements, I don't, or Sebado or
Yeah.
Dinosaur Jr. or any of them, I don't think we'd be the kind of band we are. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I think you can totally hear like the influences from. I know Pierce, for example, a big influence for him was Sonic Youth. You can definitely hear like a lot of that, like a lot of that kind of like experimentation. You're mentioning My Bloody Valentine. Obviously, I mean, like the shoegazy thing was kind of a thing in Ireland recently. Like there was a recent kind of shoegaze revivalism, I think, as well. Do you find like again, you guys are just kind of making the music you want, and then accidentally it fits in with the kind of vogue at the time, or
Oh yeah,
have
I
you
don't
guys
think
got
we're
any?
intentionally. No, we don't have this grand plan to we're here to take over the industry. No, no, no. Like we were like me and like we were all just we like when we did shoegaze, we just love shoegaze, and
Yeah,
whenever like we make a rock song, we just love rock, and it's never really like any particular reason. It's like, oh, I think the people will like this. It's like, no, this sounds good to us, so we're just gonna play it and play it this way. Like even we've written a new song recently that we're probably gonna go into record, and the whole end of it is a very like atmospheric shoegazy kind of feel to it. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
we're not losing it completely, but we're just not really as we don't literally stand there looking at our shoes. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
which is quite funny because when we went to Rotterdam, they were expecting us to be a shoegaze band, and the sound engineers kind of nearly had a conniption looking at me in the loudness of it, and the feedback from the stage, and you could see they were working because they were like, oh, I thought this was just a shoegaze band, but yeah,
Do you find that often
very
having
wrong.
you have to kind of like advertise your band somewhat and give like kind of PR proof, sort of like here's what we are, kind of laconic, here's who we are, here's what we're about. Yeah, sometimes like they do want you to kind of like fixate on a genre or fixate on influences. Do you find there's anything for what you're doing that can actually kind of satisfy um new listeners, to kind of give them an indication of of what to expect, that can be delivered in kind of a condensed way? Or do you find that what you're doing is just like a little too complex for that?
um I don't know. I think you know whatever we do, it's definitely not contrived anyway. You know what I mean? It's all very
Yeah,
natural, and as I said, I think with this EP coming up anyway, it's going to be a very concentrated, theme on lyrically anyway, and musically. I think it will feel connected, but we don't want to be rehashing the same thing over and over again after this EP. I think we're going to probably just develop more and develop more. I want each thing to be very different to the last thing so that people can see a progression. Does that
yeah.
answer your question?
No, absolutely it does. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I think like, giving yourselves room to morph is very important because, like you said, as you discover new things and as you try new things and as you grow and just get better as musicians, you want to have that room for change. And how do you find kind of like cultivating a listenership that are kind of receptive to that? Is that challenging, or
Yeah,
have you
I
had luck with
haven't
that so
found
far?
yet. Haven't found it yet. No,
Yeah,
not really. I think because before we even like started releasing any of the like the recent music, we've been playing it for so long
yeah,
that I think people that did listen to us kind of got used to the fact that okay, we're gonna go like a song could be like so different to the next one.
yeah.
Um, so like I don't know. I haven't really noticed anything like that. Unless we did something completely left field and it would like had nothing to do. Like if we got dropped all the guitars and did synthesizers.
Right.
Like if we did that, I think yeah, fair enough. But no, we haven't really yet because all our music is very guitar based, driven, So
Yeah, I think there's a great
yeah.
continuity between them. Sorry.
What do you mean?
I think there's a great continuity between the songs and the EP, which also kind of continues to the songs you have outside the EP too. I think it's interesting because you're not following a formula, and that's very apparent, I think, when you listen to the music. But at the same time, it all kind of gels well together. Do you think that's just a
Yeah,
natural result of you guys being the same four people that are making it?
yeah, and just developing a sound, playing live, and rehearsing a lot, and just writing together. Like that's yeah like it should feel each song should feel different, but it should feel like a natural flow as well. It shouldn't feel like every song is like you know like whatever, it's like it's too heavy or too soft or too like it should feel very natural. Like even on the EP, like Marina Del Rey into Temptation, we were like that jump from like a slowish kind of that slow kind of sludgy feel. We wanted it to feel natural leading into a song that was so fast tempo. So
Yeah.
we made it like an interlude using like, guitar effects and trying to replicate something like Metal Machine Music by Lou Reed, you
Yeah.
know, to like make it feel like a natural, progression, like the way albums used to be in like the 60s and 70s, where like songs would lead into each other really naturally, but the next song is very different.
Yeah, totally. One thing I gotta ask, so obviously you guys are inspired also by, a lot of like singer-songwriters, as you're mentioning, Lou Reed, and people who put a lot of emphasis on the poetry and the prose of the songs they're making. When it comes to listening to your music, I mean, the vocals tend to get kind of like a bit buried. How do you feel about that? Like in terms of the placement of the vocals, in terms of how audible the lyrics are for the listener. Do you kind of want people to actually take time to really, sit down with the record and actually kind of like try and hear what you're saying in order to get kind of like a greater understanding of what it is you're trying to get across?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, of course. I don't think they're inaudible, in that sense. Like
No,
I think
no.
you can hear what I'm trying to say, but I do know what you mean. Like I when you listen to other people's music, yeah, the vocals are more upfront. The thing is, it's not just about, what I'm trying to say. It's also the music's supposed to convey a feeling too. I think if people are interested enough in the music, they'll look into the lyrics and then they'll find a meaning, you know.
Yeah.
But besides that, I feel quite happy the way the vocals sit on the EP and what we've done. Like especially like I don't know, like I think it feels right. I think if it was any louder, it would block out the sonics of the music itself.
Yeah. No, I remember Thurston Moore apparently when he saw Dinosaur Jr. for the first time, that was his advice and was like, you gotta turn it down because like you have these great songs, but no one can hear them because everything is just like turned up to 11, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I know. I'm sure I was the biggest Dynasty Junior fan for ages, so
Yeah.
I can. It's probably where I subconsciously robbed it from. But no, just whatever way the mix turned out. Like, and yeah, there is like like the songs aren't exactly the happiest of songs, and they're definitely not trying to. I'm not trying to like it's just the songs are just about me, and if people are interested in that, then they can read into it. Because even if you bought the vinyl, like there's the lyric sheets on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like that.
As a lyricist, do you favor directness or abstraction?
Um, I think direct, like I think I always really hated when, like when lyrics are, riddled in like, metaphors and all this kind of crack. I really like the honest lyric, like,
Yeah.
whoever, like, I don't know, like, it's hard to explain, like to pick out a pinpoint a kind of but like maybe like with Richie Edwards, he had the lyric, I've been too honest with myself. I should have lied like everybody else.
Yeah.
Like it's very like, say it as it is. That's it. Do you know what I mean? Take it or leave it. If you don't like it, fuck off. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I really like that kind of angle. And especially if the music is aggressive enough behind it to back your point. I think
Yeah.
that's really powerful.
No, absolutely. I think yeah, I tend to like bitterness and sarcasm sometimes too, and really good, smart writing, but something that also is tangible, if that makes sense. Like something you can grit your teeth into a little bit.
Yeah, of course. Oh no, that's my favorite. So that's why I love, Elliot Smith and
Yeah.
all of that kind of crack.
Yeah, Ellie Smith's a good reference point to me because like when you listen to your music, it's not too dissimilar. I think a comparison actually. Like you guys have I know in press releases have referenced Ellie Smith as a reference, and I think like on first blush it mightn't seem that way, but I think like it is something that if you're familiar with Elliot's music, it's like especially on this EP, I think you can definitely hear that influence a lot more.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, like yeah, he's definitely my favorite artist and the lads as well, we're like it's more what he had so little, like
Yeah,
especially if you look at like Roman Candle or the self-titled album, he had such little instrumentation because he was only using 4 tracks, and how he could make the song sound so powerful just with the type of chords he was playing and his lyrics,
yeah.
and he didn't have exactly the strongest voice, but man, he got his point across.
Yeah, no, I think his voice was like beautifully suited to that style of music. It's something that's very unique and can only kind of be captured. I think, I think it's a similar thing with Jeff Buckley, where it's like, again, this just works perfectly for this style of music. Like, what's very interesting, we're talking about kind of hardcore music there, and I remember why I got into the 80s hardcore music as a teenager was because of that like rush and that excitement that it brought out in me. That was just like, like you were mentioning, like the big takeover. A song like that still just gets my blood pumping when I hear it. But similarly, I
Mm.
think a song like Angela's by Elliot Smith is just has that similar feeling for me where I just feel, the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, and I just like
Oh yeah,
I
no,
get
that's
those
it for me
goosebumps,
too.
you know?
Yeah, it's like when you listen to Needle in the Hay or something. It
Yeah,
just it's the same feeling, but it's not, as the big takeover or band DC. Like I
yeah,
think when you're young, you're so full of energy and that everyone's against you. But
yeah,
then when you hit like you're like I'm 22 now, like if you're in a point in your life where you can't be too angry. That's
yeah,
people think you're, whatever, but
yeah.
you kind of have to mellow it out. And I think Elliot, Nick Drake, and I don't know, uh, someone else does a great job on helping that.
It's a good transition actually. Yeah, I think like I was around that age when I started getting into the more kind of cerebral kind of like post hardcore bands like as you were mentioning Fugazi as well as bands like Big Black and Wire and Gang of Four. I think that was like that transition that I needed from kind of just like hardcore punk and I needed that kind of more like bitterness, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. Everyone has it, and everyone has their own vices, and I think you need someone. I know everyone that has that one artist. Like let it be like Phoebe Bridgers or
Mhm.
whoever. Um, I don't know. Elliot's just mine. That's it.
Yeah. I want to ask also, just before I let you go, a little bit about this EP is coming out on Blowtorch Records, who are probably, if not my favorite, at least one of my favorite record labels in the country at the moment. I just think they're doing a great job. They have a very diverse catalog. They have, they're just picking some really great artists to release music with. And I think like the sincerity of that label of trying to like really, I don't know, really give a pedestal to a plethora of Irish artists is really commendable. And they seem like also a very ethical company. Again, I don't have any affiliation, so from the outset, just from other artists I've spoken to who have released it with them, it seems like, a very like fair deal of just like, releasing the music while also allowing the artists the rights to their music. They're not trying to nickel and dime people or anything like that. It just seems like a very ethical label that's really just trying to kind of bolster Irish talent in this country. How did Blue Slate get involved with Blowtorch?
Yeah, we originally did PR with Richard uh a long time ago with Wipers, and
Mhm.
we kind of just stayed in contact anyway. Um, Obviously he released, the search results. Um,
Yep.
was that an EP or an album? I can't remember.
I think it was an album. I interviewed him for The Goo actually when that came out.
Oh yeah, and here's me knocking the goo, and you like him working with them, starting
No,
with
I
them,
was
man.
thinking actually I'll give my own perspective from that, but it's just that yeah, I think you're right. I do have a fear of like reviewing people's. I tend not to review new artist music too often because again I'll only sort of I'll select the artists that I think are actually good that I can give a positive review to because I do feel like shit if because I once did a review years ago for an artist, and if you look up that artist, like my review is like one of the only things that come up, and it was kind of a lukewarm. It
Oh
wasn't even
God.
terrible.
Okay,
It
I
was
get
just
I
kind
get
of a
what you mean
lukewarm
then.
review.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm always like, I just feel terrible because like if that's the only press they really got for that record,
Yeah,
I
you're
just feel
right. Yeah.
terrible. Be like kind of just being like it's okay.
Oh God. No,
So
no,
now I
like
only
okay,
I
you're
only
not.
choose to review stuff if I know I already like it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, 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 exactly. But like with Richard, yeah, we had the EP, and we said if we want to do it right, we want to at least get like sell vinyls of it. And we went to
Yeah.
him with the EP. We had it mixed and mastered, but not mixed and mastered for vinyl yet because we didn't know. And he just loved it. He said,
Yeah.
"Yeah, like I really want to press this and get it done." And like one thing I think everyone should know is that he's not in it for the money. He's genuinely in it for the love of music. Like he really
Yeah.
wants to just support Irish bands and make sure that like he did a great job with Nerves as well. And
Mhm.
Like he's just like he's really easy to work with, and he's like really enthusiastic. He's like, oh yeah, they're like even today we got a text off him. He was like, oh yeah, the finals came in. He's so excited. He took a video of it and everything, and it's just like a music lover. Like,
Yeah,
and it feels like that kind of thing, like that SST thing, or
yeah.
that what was that
Discord.
label? Yeah, Discord. It has that same kind of feel to it. It's like we're not in this for money. We're just keeping it as organic, and it's really good. He does like the pre-order, so he won't get it pressed until the certain amount of people buy it, and then he'll go to get it pressed. So nothing's
Yeah.
wasted, nothing's, So it's really good.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. Like I think like people should really be supporting Blowtorch. And the other thing you were mentioning that kind of like love of his music, but I also love about like Richard is that he uses his website and his podcast to give a spotlight to artists that aren't even on his label, which I think is like that's a sign that it's not just about, buy my shit. That's like, I literally like the music and I just want people to know about this, even if they're signed with me or not.
Yeah, I think every scene does need that kind of big brother kind of thing, and he's definitely that for the
Yeah.
Irish. So like he's there, kudos to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Support Blowtorch. Again, not affiliated. I just like them.
Yeah,
I always feel
we
the
are.
need to disclose that. Yeah, yeah, you guys are. Yeah, otherwise you'd be talking shit. No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess the final thing I'll ask is like you were mentioning the potential for like a spring tour. Are you doing any kind of like release for the EP that we should mention and to plug? And generally when it comes to that kind of springtime tour that you were talking about in around April or May, where do you generally have your sites set? Keep in mind this will actually be coming out in like February, so
Okay. Well, as of like January the 20th, nothing really gig wise. I think it's just all we're just in talk with agents at the minute, like booking agents and stuff like that. We're not really nothing's been fully booked or anything. I mean we have our Irish date, but we don't have a confirmed date, if you know what I mean. I don't want to
sure,
say a
sure.
date now and then in a month's time it's like, oh, it's a week after. So I think we're just kind of concentrating on just getting the EP out and just yeah, just trying to feed people music, you know.
What's actually one thing I want to ask actually just before we wrap up is a little bit because you were mentioning you're from Kildare, Easttown, if I'm correct, is that right?
Yeah,
Or yeah.
yeah.
So I was wondering, kind of, what do you guys find about the kind of music scene in Kildare? I know sometimes acts can play around Maynooth. I don't know like what
Is
else
there?
is going on like in Nace or anything like that.
No,
What's it like to actually get gigs there? Is there much of a scene?
we none. Actually, none at all. We had to go straight to Dublin. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? There's nothing in Kildare except for like a few guitar shops, and you know them guys, and that's it.
yeah,
Like not that I know of. I don't want to offend anyone if I don't know a band.
yeah,
But no, I don't know any bands. I don't even. I'm not even aware of any gigs because I'm from around like each sounds near Nace,
yeah.
and like there's no bands that come through there or anything. It's all kind of very like cover acts, and people are happy enough to receive that. But we're not.
Would that be something you'd ever be interested in, kind of building up the local scene, or are you kind of content to play for
Yeah,
gigs
I don't know.
elsewhere?
Like, if I tell you what though, if someone did come up to me like in another band and they were starting up a band, like I'd have no problem. Like, yeah, don't go and play, you know, Fibber's Basement with this sketchy promoter or something. Do you know what I mean? I'd
Okay.
I'd be like, I'd look after them if they. But I haven't came across a band yet. But if us doing this, if there's people in Ace or wherever in Kildare hear about us doing what we're doing and we're saying that we're from Kildare, I hope it, inspires them to pick up and start a band. Because you don't necessarily have to be a big band to influence people to pick up and start a band. You know what I mean? They just need the go ahead of someone else, if you know what I mean.
I
Like that's how
absolutely
I
do.
started. Because I was like, oh, there's a band in Dublin. I was like, yeah, no, fuck him, I'll start my own band. Do you know what I mean? Everything's just like everything's just an attack.
You're the most offensive band ever.
No, it's just me. The rest of the guys are lovely. I'm just an
The
asshole.
rest of the guys are totally fine. I don't
I don't know what happened to me.
know. It's like, yeah, we got invited to play here, and I said, fuck that, and I don't know why I've
Yeah,
heard some big.
yeah.
um,
I know.
I was noticing actually in the last couple of years, pretty much every like little pocket of Ireland has had like some kind of like little music scene. You're seeing like venues people can play. I think within I say a 20-kilometer radius, there's probably some kind of like music scene no matter where you are in the country.
Mm.
Have you guys checked out much of Ireland outside of kind of like let's say Leinster or even within Leinster? I mean, have you guys checked out much beyond Dublin or anything?
Oh yeah, of course. Like, like I think Belfast is a really thriving scene at the minute. Like, obviously, you have Virgins who like the thing with Richard is, kind of like having the big brother for a lot of bands coming up that would be our age or younger even, like, because like the Stratford Rise, like they're
Yeah, they're
from
amazing.
Belfast, and like yeah, like it's and even
I
like
just saw
there's
them open for the Jesus. They're incredible.
yeah, like our first gig we ever done was in Belfast with they were opening for us and we played in front of 5 people and it was really really cool. They were just like
Did
I
you know
remember
what to
saying to
expect
them
when you saw them?
no, and then I saw them and I asked them, I was like, here, listen, have you played in Dublin yet? And they're like, no, we don't really play live much. And I was like, listen, I'm gonna book you a gig, right? And yeah, we got them their first show down in Dublin.
Was that
So it
the
was
Halloween
like,
show or?
no, it was like a year ago, you
Okay,
know. But yeah, no, like I'm really happy that they're doing bits now. Like Cheese Lizard, like that's a really cool gig. Galway's got a really good scene as well because you got like Shark School and I think Adora from there. I didn't ask them where they were
yeah,
from when we were playing with them, but I think they're from there. And yeah, no, obviously Cork is like hot shit at the minute too. So
yeah.
not looking at every corner of the country has got something which is really cool. And it's really inspiring. As much as I give out about it, it is quite inspiring to see people doing stuff and eggs each other on to try
Yeah.
different things.
Perfect. Well, thanks very much for your time, John. I
Yeah,
guess the
no
final thing
problem,
I'll
man.
say is the EP's out 12th of February. It'll probably be out by the time this goes up, but it'll be out then on Blowtorch. You probably get it on their website. Anything else you'd
Oh,
like
it's
to
all
add or
out.
wrap up? Yeah, it's sold out. Okay, well, you can listen to it on a streaming platform of your choice then. You can uh, you can call Richard and just be like, "Do you have any like spare ones?" But
He probably would. You know what? He probably. I think he already did a repress. I think he'd repress it again. Yeah, without a doubt.
yeah.
If the demand was there, so everybody just text him and annoy him.
Would you bring it on the
Yeah.
road with you, or is like vinyl just
No,
so?
we had none left to do that. But you know what? Like I'd say we will. I'd say we'll definitely get in contact with him in the next couple of weeks and try to sort something out because I don't want to be going on the road empty-handed. Like we'll probably have shirts and everything done by then.
Perfect. Is there anything you'd like to have before we wrap up, or?
Yeah. No.
Okay. Thanks very much
Thanks,
for your time,
for
man.
having me.
Oh, absolutely, John. Thanks very much for doing that. Anytime you want to come back, you're always welcome. Um,
Yeah. Cool.
thanks, man.
Yeah. All right. Au revoir.
Take care.
Cheers.
Bye. Thank you for listening to that episode of Post-Burnout.com interviews. We're an independent venture run by yours truly, and as I said at the beginning, liking, rating, subscribing, and sharing really helps us out a lot. If you're feeling extra generous, we do have a PayPal donation link in the episode description, but don't feel obligated, of course. We've also begun releasing occasional exclusive episodes on Spotify, so subscribe there if you'd be interested in hearing those. Thanks again for listening, and see you next time.